it is apple season, and one of my favorite things to make is maple crab apple butter. So, apple butter is not fancy applesauce. This is a 100% forest product confection of apples and maple syrup, and there's a bunch of different ways that you can make it depending on the apples that you have around you. Most people are going to consider crab apples these small red guys there, like the Dolgo crabs. And then I have Centennial crabs there too, which are not going to be super tart like the Dolgos. I went out to my favorite farm, Bubbling Springs out in Wisconsin, to get Centennial crabs to make a big batch. I'm going to make a big batch and a smaller batch just to show you some differences in how you can do it. You want to make sure when you're picking to avoid, apples that have been eaten by bugs. Also look out for hornets. Then I'll give the apples a little bit of a wash if I need to remove some cobwebs or something like that, just to make sure they're nice and clean. Then I'm going to cut the apples up, and like I put in the text before, if you want a nice tart crab apple sauce, I would use 1/3 tart small crab apples and 2/3 apples that are not that tart. They could be sweet or kind of mild, like my Centennial crabs here. We're going to add a little bit of water, and then we're just going to mash them up. And this is a smaller batch, just to kind of show you the super tart version, but both of the versions I'm showing you are technically crab apple butter. Then we're going to put this through a food mill. A food mill is okay for smaller batches like this, but for the extra large batch, we're going to need something a little more serious. But depending on your equipment, there's a lot of different ways you can make it work. One thing that you do not do, that some recipes will say, is they'll just take the seeds out and leave the skins in the butter. That's insane. Don't do that. If anyone tells you that that's okay, these people are not your friends. Okay, so then I'm mixing in maple syrup and cinnamon, and then I'm baking this at 325 to 350, and I'm whisking it, every 10 minutes or so until it just gets nice and thick, and just look at the color on that. This is why I recommend trying a version with tart crab apples first. This is after about 45 minutes to an hour. With a smaller batch, you can get them done quicker. Okay, for the prison batch, this is with a ton of apples. I have about 28 pounds here, and I'm going to put them into a big pot outside because I couldn't fit this pot on my stove. And just like the smaller batch, I'm going to add a little bit of water. And then we're not even going to cut these apples up. We're just going to cook them whole until they break down. And I'm going to put a sheet tray on top. You can use a lid to help them cook quicker. And you want to make sure to keep an eye on the level of water in the bottom, because with a big batch like this, with a really strong heat element on the bottom, this could easily burn. So just be careful, take your time, and add water if you need to. Usually I stir them with a big wooden paddle. I was moving and I don't know where that is, so stir them around with the tongs. Just make sure to pay attention to the bottom. You can see they're starting to break down there. This is after about 20 to 30 minutes. So just mash them up, and once you get a super thick paste of apples and skins and seeds, then it's ready to go through another tool. So this is called the squeezo, or an applesauce maker, also really excellent for tomatoes. So this is what you want if you're really serious and you want to make big batches. Like, this is going to give me about 2 gallons. This is the thing you want. It's about $60 to $70, and it's a great investment. Just look at the skins, and the seeds are all coming out of the front there. And then the applesauce comes through the screen. So there's no cleaning the food mill. It's just really streamlined. Then I thought I was going to make this big batch in a slow cooker. Slow cookers are really only good for smaller batches. Like, I would maybe do like 3 quarts to a gallon max. And it's the same thing. We're going to add our cinnamon, add our maple syrup, and mix everything all together. And because we didn't add the tart crab apples, this one is going to look more like regular applesauce. Then again, we're slow cooking in the oven. I cooked this partially in the slow cooker, and it was just really not going quick enough because I doubled my recipe. So for large batches, this is a restaurant hotel pan, and you can see I'm doing the same thing as before. I'm whisking like every 30 minutes, and this should take about 2.5 hours compared to like 12 hours in a slow cooker. And the slow cooker can burn too. So I prefer this because there's more surface area in a wide, deep pan like this. And this is kind of the temperature you want. It shouldn't be bubbling all over your oven unless you want to clean your oven. You want it kind of gently bubbling. This is at 325. So you just take your time, and when it's done, this is almost there. You want to be able to see the pan when you're scraping through it with a spoon. And this I can see is still kind of jiggly. It still has some water in it, so I'm going to keep going. And if you don't have a big pan like this, you can use a couple deep pots or dishes. And when it's all done, we're going to put it into jars, and then we're going to can it. So we'll can those for about 10 minutes, and then they're ready to go. One good test of quality is to see if your apple butter passes the gravity test. And what I mean by that is if you turn the jar upside down, none of it should escape. That is what it should look like. It shouldn't wiggle. And you're really going to get that from baking it.
Okay, we gotta try a little bit. Because if you're just thinking, oh, it's like fancy applesauce, that's not a good description. It should be so thick. I mean, just look at that. Oh, it's so rich and so thick. One of the best ways to enjoy this is, honestly, when I would buy jars of this from Sam, I would just eat the jar just straight off the spoon. It's so good. It is just dark and rich and delicious. It's not fancy applesauce. It is a confection of apples and maple syrup. And once you taste it for yourself, I think you'll understand exactly what I'm talking about there.
I hope you're having a great fruit season, and I really hope you try the apple butter because it's not just fancy applesauce. Thanks for watching.